On the morning of October 10, 2006, in the quiet suburb of Warren Township, New Jersey, a woman who had dedicated her life to service, to family, and to resilience suddenly vanished without a trace. Her name was Margaret Haddican-McEnroe, and for her family, friends, and community, the silence that followed her disappearance has lasted nearly 2 decades. Her case is one that blends the mystery of an abrupt vanishing, the heartbreak of children left behind, the complexities of an investigation that pointed in multiple directions, and the enduring uncertainty that comes when a community still has no answers. Margaret's story begins long before that October afternoon. Born on August 25, 1977, she came into the world under circumstances that would eventually shape much of her identity. Her teenage birth mother gave her the name Sherwood Haley, a combination of her own maiden name and her birth father's last name. But only months after her birth, Margaret was adopted by Patrick and Eileen Haddican, a New Jersey couple who gave her not only their name, but a loving home and 3 siblings, all adopted as well. Growing up in Warren Township, Margaret was the eldest of 4. She developed a strong personality early on, a blend of determination and compassion, traits that would define her later life. As a teenager, she was known for her athletic drive. She threw herself into sports, into physical challenges, and even into boxing. Her strength was not just physical, though. She was deeply loyal to her friends and protective of those around her. These qualities became more visible after the devastating events of September 11, 2001. Like many young Americans moved by a desire to serve, Margaret enlisted in the Army. She was sent to Fort Jackson in South Carolina for basic training and later stationed at Fort Riley, Kansas, where she worked as a tank mechanic. It was grueling, difficult work, but she thrived in it, proud of her ability to meet challenges head-on. During her time in the service, Margaret also sought out her biological family. She located her birth mother and began to build a relationship with her, reconnecting with her roots. She briefly re-established contact with her birth father, though their bond was disrupted after Hurricane Katrina destroyed much of his life, and they lost touch. After 2 years in the Army, Margaret was medically discharged in early 2004, returning to New Jersey, and she carried with her the discipline of the military, but also the bonds she had formed and the experiences that had shaped her. Back home, she transitioned to civilian life with remarkable dedication. She married her longtime friend, Timothy McEnroe, a landscaping contractor. Together, they had 2 daughters, while Margaret had another daughter from a previous relationship. Being a mother became her most important role, one she carried with pride and love. Those who knew her described her as someone who poured herself into her children's lives, who wanted to give them stability, warmth, and the kind of upbringing that would help them flourish. But Margaret's sense of service didn't stop at her home. She joined the Washington Valley Fire Company as a volunteer firefighter, later moving to Mount Bethel. She had already earned recognition years earlier, during Hurricane Floyd in 1999, when she worked tirelessly to help rescue and assist residents of New Jersey during the floods. That spirit of service and courage was core to her character. Even while balancing motherhood, she continued volunteering as a firefighter. Knowing that her strength and presence could make a difference in people's lives, by 2006, Margaret's life looked full. A mother of 3, a wife, a firefighter, and a veteran, she seemed to embody resilience. But like many families, life behind closed doors was not without its challenges. On October 9, 2006, the day before she disappeared, Margaret and her husband had an argument at their Warren Township home. The disagreement escalated enough that the police were called. By the time authorities arrived, however, Margaret had already left for her parents' house, staying there for a short time before returning home later that night. During the argument, her cell phone had been broken, leaving her without her usual means of communication. The following morning, October 10th, Margaret's day appeared to begin normally. Between 8:30 and 9 a.m., she spoke with one of her closest friends on the phone, a call that seemed routine, but would later be remembered as one of the last confirmed contacts anyone had with her. At around 1:30 in the afternoon, her husband Timothy left the house to run a quick errand to buy baby formula. When he returned less than 2 hours later, just before 3 p.m., he found their 6-month-old daughter alone in her crib. Margaret was gone. The circumstances immediately raised questions. Her personal vehicle was still parked in the driveway. Her broken phone remained at the house. But missing from the home were a duffel bag and roughly $11,000 in cash. There was no note, no explanation. The children were left behind, and for a woman described as being deeply devoted to her daughters, this absence struck many as out of character. At first, those close to her considered the possibility that she had simply walked away to clear her head. After all, she had left home after arguments in the past, always returning later. Friends reassured Timothy of this, encouraging him not to worry. But as the hours passed, then days, Margaret did not return. On October 12th, 2 days after she was last seen, Timothy officially reported her missing to Warren Township police. Investigators began by looking at the home. There were no signs of forced entry, no broken doors or windows, and no indications of a struggle. Margaret's car remained untouched in the driveway, and there were no records of her using her bank accounts, credit cards, or withdrawing money. It was as though she had simply stepped out of her home and vanished into thin air. 6 weeks later, on Thanksgiving Day, a discovery deepened the mystery. On Dockwatch Hollow Road, about a mile from Margaret's home, an Army t-shirt belonging to her was found lying on the ground. It bore the insignia of her unit and appeared to be in clean, good condition, not weather-worn as one might expect after weeks outdoors. Tests were conducted on the shirt, but no conclusive evidence was extracted. Still, for investigators, it suggested that Margaret, or someone connected to her disappearance, left a trace deliberately or by chance not far from her home. As months passed, the investigation expanded. In 2007, the FBI joined state and county authorities in a large-scale search effort. They used aviation units, searched dogs, mounted patrols, and canvassed wooded areas and a large quarry nearby. Despite the intensity of these efforts, nothing definitive was found. Margaret's disappearance remained a void, an unanswered question. By 2011, investigators began to publicly identify her husband, Timothy, as a person of interest in the case. While they emphasized that this did not make him a suspect, the designation carried weight. Timothy expressed frustration with the attention, pointing out that he had allowed police to search their home, their backyard, their rental property, his financial statements, and even phone records. He stated that he had cooperated at every stage, and that the person of interest label damaged his reputation in the community. Law enforcement, however, explained that such a designation was necessary to clarify the focus of the investigation. Through all of this, Margaret's family and friends continued to voice their belief that she would never voluntarily abandon her children. Those who knew her best insisted that the love she had for her daughters outweighed any desire to leave, no matter the circumstances. For them, her absence could only mean that something had happened beyond her control. Her story began to spread through true crime networks and television. She was featured on the program Disappeared in an episode aptly titled Hometown Hero. Online forums, blogs, and podcasts revisited her case, keeping her name in the public eye. A $5,000 reward was established through Somerset County Crime Stoppers for information, leading to her whereabouts, but the years continued to pass without resolution. As of today, nearly 2 decades later, Margaret Haddican-McEnroe's case remains unsolved. There have been no arrests, no confirmed sightings, and no definitive breakthroughs. Her daughters, who were just 6 months old and 2 years old at the time, grew up without their mother. The youngest has no memory of her at all, only stories and photographs that preserve who she was. Her disappearance is one of those cases that continues to haunt New Jersey's cold case files. For investigators, for family, and for community members, the hope remains that someone, somewhere, remembers something. Perhaps a neighbor who saw something unusual that day, perhaps a passerby who noticed a detail at the time and dismissed it, or perhaps someone directly connected who, with the passage of years, might finally decide to come forward. The absence of answers is what makes her story so heavy. It is not simply the mystery of where she went or what happened, but the way her life was interrupted, the way her children were left without their mother, the way her service and courage are remembered even as the truth about her fate remains hidden. Margaret's life was marked by her resilience, her willingness to serve, and her love for her children. From her adoption to her years in the Army, from her work as a firefighter to her role as a mother, she embodied strength. That strength is now carried on by those who fight to keep her story alive. Today, more than 17 years later, the question remains the same. What happened to Margaret Haddican-McEnroe? Until that question is answered, her case will remain one of New Jersey's enduring mysteries. And so, as this story closes, we are left with a picture of a woman who should be remembered not only for her disappearance, but for her life. She was a daughter, a soldier, a firefighter, a wife, a mother. She was someone who gave to her community and her country. She is someone who deserves answers. Thank you for watching Fatal Secrets of True Crime. Subscribe for more stories like this. Real crimes, hidden truths, and the secrets they tried to bury. Your support helps keep these stories alive and the pressure on for answers. Till next time, remember, every secret eventually comes to light.